Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest narration in the web series The Drums of War, which is the second book in the Sneakyverse. If you are new to either the book or the series, there is a link down below for both. Anyways, onto the chapter. Chapter 5, The Line. In a bustling mining town, Jax has been enjoying himself. The war stories and barely believable tales of antics of the humans he'd served with, he told in coffee parlors, were popular amongst the intoxicated of both sexes. Though the admiration and further libations from the men were far less captivating than the rapt attention a very pretty woman with a lithe figure and a strong tail gave him. Comely, indeed, and she would come to listen to him. Though it seemed to onlookers that he had captivated her, it was her dark pools of eyes that he had dove into and found them deep and inescapable. She kept those eyes trained on him so long as he spoke, and so he spoke, seeing in those depths possibilities. Indeed, Jax had begun to expect that if he were to ask Ray to accompany him to an upcoming autumn festival, she might not reject the notion. Even with troubling rumors about somebody attacking a neighboring nation, and the sudden vanishing of Star Sailors from Star Council space were far from his mind, and the minds of the other coffee parlor patrons. It was in this ease and comfort that he and many other Nomadian residents found their lives shattered by horror. It began with burning streaks of the Rex Space Defense Force. More law enforcement than military fell from the sky. He was just in the middle of a story about the time his buddy Aaron had gotten stuck in his own armor when he stopped and said, "Does anybody else smell smoke?" There was a general testing of the air by the group of variably intoxicated patrons, followed by a fruitless checking of datapads for news. "Network's down," somebody in a small crowd said. "Well, we'll just go outside and take a look," Jack said, and Ray subtly clasped his hand. Outside, the pair squeezed each other's hands so hard they hurt. The sky was streaks and gashes of billowing black smoke and destroyed ships and fighters. And what destroyed them was descending while raining hot plasma down on anything that looked vaguely like it might be fortified. "The ancestors preserve us," Ray whispered. "I'm not going to wait on them," Jack said. "We need to get undercover now, and not just the lounge." Someone in the crowd said, "The mines! There are some pretty big chambers down there, and it's like miles of rock to burn through." "Good plan," Vex said. "If they're doing aerial lances like that, they don't care about collateral damage. Everyone, split up in groups of 3 or 4, and get as many people as you can to the mines." "What if they follow us down?" Ray asked. "We'll flood the mines. Hopefully they can't swim." An hour later, a press of over 100 panicked elderly and children were running along behind Jax. The majority of parents and other adults had elected to buy time. Jax had to focus on his mission, save the civvies, get them undercover, to keep from bolting off to join them. "As long as the pups are alive," he muttered. The sounds of shouting and plasma launch discharge spurred him and Ray on, and though he was obliged to lead the way, she insisted on bringing up the rear. She insisted that none of the injured were left behind. Then they saw it. Salvation. The gates to the mines, and behind them the shaft plunging down beneath the rock. There were miners with plasma cutters and false axes at the gates, and Jax knew better than to relax, even as the miners swung the gates open and escorted their panicked charges to the shaft elevator. "We're getting ready to flood the main shaft and everything but the vents to the largest chamber," one of the miners said. "Get everyone up against the back wall and pray the ancestors remember us." Jax just nodded and gripped his crowbar as he scanned the road they had run down. "I'm going to need fighters. We have to hold out until the Republic gets here." "The Republic? You think they'll come?" "Of course," Jax said with steel in his voice. "Of course." The next day, Jax held a meeting with the others he was thinking of as leaders, or maybe other fighters, to tell them what he thought and hear what they thought in return. They had swam to an air pocket in one of the flooded tunnels and held their conversation in the dim light of portable glow lanterns to keep the civvies from panicking at what might be said. There, Jax and Ray floated with Kai, a miner and the one who had suggested sheltering in the tunnels. May, an engineer from the big city to help design and upgrade refinery facility, and Ash, a man reluctant to divulge his past. "So we have about 800 civvies, none of whom are in fighting shape, no weapons, no food, and a highly defensible position," Jax opened. "I believe our first priority should be arming ourselves, so that we can raid the surface for food." "The first aid kits are barely adequate. They're made to deal with maybe a localized plasma burn from a cutter malfunction, or to put temporary splints on a broken limb. Not a lance wound, and stabilized breaks from healing. Ray murmured softly. I did a little scouting, Kai said. Just popping up in the vent covers. They didn't see me. I saw my house. What's left of it, anyway. I know how to get to where there are some weapons that we could get if we're quick, if we're quiet. The flooding did significant damage to the mines, May muttered. I haven't seen any signs that it's getting worse, but the quakes will probably keep on. We'll have to reassure the civilians. If they bombard the town from orbit, though... There's not much we can do about that, Jack said firmly. So let's focus on what we can manage. Weapons, food, medicine, blankets, Ash said. The people are cold, scared. Blankets will help with morale. Survivors. There might be survivors. Weapons, food, weapons, blankets, and survivors. Okay, that's a start. Who wants to tell them? Will the Republic really come? Ash asked. They will come, Rex said firmly. I can tell them, Ray said, as she reached out to clasp hands with Rex. He let her squeeze his hand once, and they drove down into the water to swim back to the main chamber. The people were understandably stressed at the news that their only protectors would soon leave them alone, but they were reassured when Ray explained that they planned on raiding the surface for supplies and planned to be gone for a few hours at most. Later, Ash was skulking around the police station, or at least the charred remnants of one, while Jax tried to see him doing so from inside the vent cover. He had been a little apprehensive of the man's claims that he could scout the building unnoticed, but the proof of the meat was inside the shell, so he took a chance. It paid off. All clear, Ash whispered from outside Jax's field of view. You made your point, Jax said. Good work. It's not good in here. Jax opened the vent cover and dropped to all fours to creep his way to the shattered building, and his companions did so behind him. They squeezed through a gap in the rubble and slowly shifted the rubble until they had tunneled their way to the basement stairs, which they descended immediately. They tried to ignore the singed and shattered corpses of the police officers as they crawled past or over them. They failed at this. They had marginally more success in ignoring Ray's vomit at the grisly task. In the basement they found chimp-prompt weapons, mag-axe, plasma casters, and long-distance tasers in rifle and pistol configurations, as well as some light flak armor and personal shields. Don't bother with the casters or tasers, Jax ordered as he wrapped his hands around the familiar shape of a rifle stock. Terrans used these for a reason. The others deferred to his experience, and Ray went to check the other basement rooms for medical supplies. When she cried out, Rex and the others rushed into the adjoining room, but found no danger there. Only the chief of police, a mag pistol laid at his feet, and the wall to his left painted in sanguine spatter. Nim, she almost moaned in grief. You knew him? Ash asked. My uncle. The others murmured their apologies, none of them strangers to such loss in the past day, and Ash pulled a discarded coat over the man's taken by despair. We have to make sure the people don't decide that this is a good idea, he softly murmured. Okay, see what else we can find for supplies here. Kai, can we get to a clinic from the tunnels? 3 of them. We'll hit the nearest one first, then we'll swim out to the bay and see if we can get anything from the fishery. Then they once again committed to the grisly task of crawling through the rubble. The clinic was miraculously intact, only a little exterior fire from the fighting, but it was also guarded. The invaders hadn't expected anyone to actually attack with weapons, as thus far most resistance had been fierce but only armed with improvised weapons. The 2 guards were relieved of their duties by magnetically accelerated iron chunks that left golf ball-sized exit wounds in the back before they even knew that they were under attack. Inside, there was not only a treasure trove of medical supplies, which Ray directed them to take only the most versatile or most dire need of, but there were also prisoners in one of the exam rooms. They had injuries, indicated that they were painful but not lethal. Jax was furious. The fishermen offered enough food for the next few days, and their triumphant return kindled hope in the sheltering civilians that might just hold out. In low orbit over Numunda, Acolyte Lord Kakai Savron surveyed his glorious conquest. Glad he was to have received orders to seek out resource-rich planets, for instead of wasting his talent spilling unworthy blood to sate his thirst of luxure, he had instead found a race worthy of toiling for his glory. They could never be true warriors. 5 days and he had obtained control over the system and planet. Truly, the pathetic resistance offered by the so-called fleet had dismayed him. But the reports of the ferocity with which the males and some of the females in the orb below fight against his warriors, armed only with what is to hand, and sometimes merely tooth and claw, excited him greatly. it would be pleasing to elevate the lion's share of exotic serfs to more worthy work, to more worthy services. The new acquisition would even free up many serfs to become warriors, even which would mean more sacrifices to Xur, which would mean greater favor, although there were still pockets of resistance across the planet. Even though his forces controlled the communication infrastructure for the planetary and superluminal networks, these pockets seemed to somehow act in concert to keep vital positions outside of Oxork's Ricefall reach. It would seem that a mere scout group was inefficient, so he was being reinforced by Acolyte Lord Narix Quinn, who had been reassigned to the subjugation group, including a battleship, 3 frigates, and their escort. This should provide sufficient warriors and equipment to properly subjugate the planet, freeing Acolyte Lord Gaikai Savan up for a much more pleasant task of crushing the next planet's defenses. Just 2 days of further drudgery until Lord Acolyte Narix Quinn arrived to take on the unenviable task of crushing the independent spirits of new serfs. At least, he had a few specimens for his own research and the best methods to do so to occupy his time. 2 days later, Lord Acolyte Narix Quinn had sent his counterpart sprawling off of his own dais with a metallic backhand snap. "Why are your escorts not interdicting hyperspace exits around this position?" Acolyte Lord Gaikai Savan staggered to his feet in fury. "Because my scout flotilla wiped away all resistance in less than a day." "Observe," Acolyte Lord Narix Quinn said coldly as he slammed a data crystal into an input, and the display screen lit up with the scene of a Terran fleet engaging an extraction fleet, and far from being swept away, they were fighting the extraction fleet to a slow defeat. "Is that a stone temple?" Acolyte Lord Gaikai Savan blurted out. "It is. Why? To show they can," Acolyte Lord Narix Quinn said in disgust. Acolyte Lord Gaikai Savan's eyes went wide as he asked, "How did that cuirass take hits from behind?" "The Terrans apparently used kinetic weaponry. They fired the munitions in a slingshot trajectory, while another ship forced it to maneuver into the line of travel. The calculations involved. It is my belief that this is not even their main fighting force of the Terran military. For observe further." Acolyte Lord Narix Quinn twisted the crystal to display a split video of several systems on the screens. "These look like merchant vessels with guns strapped to them, and Priest Lord Tyglak Palxa agrees that this is likely the case. These fleets are likely auxiliaries sent out to probe our strength while the Terrans gather their true forces." "Thank you for relaying this. I shall indeed run hyperspace interdiction at the next world." "Your orders have changed. We are to extract what we can and carry it off to the Dominion. The expeditionary fleet is insufficient." Acolyte Lord Gaikai Savan resisted the urge to spit upon the floor. "I too have information. These mammal worms are worthy of at the very least toiling underneath Akzak. Though their forces are defeated, the people fight on, just as the serfs did before they were broken and rebuilt the Oxor's glory. May the stars tremble at his step. They are mammals. Hold hostage their young, as we do for an unruly serf." "This is a good plan, brother. We must not allow the Terrans to surprise us, as they did Acolyte Lord Zamzi Avab." End of chapter. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.